One of the most important parts of a video game is how it begins, but crafting the perfect opening is no mean feat. It requires a careful balance of setting the tone for the narrative and introducing the player to the fundamental mechanics that will carry them through the whole adventure. This is a difficult task, but pulling it off can be the difference between make or break for the rest of the game. How's it going everyone, and welcome back to the Loading Zone, where today, for the first time in Loading Zone history, and I know that the very long history of 3 episodes, we have a special guest. I would like to give a warm welcome to my good friend and fellow member of the Palblock YouTube channel, Just That Finley.
Hello, happy to be here. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, it's good to have you here, and well, we're going to be talking about first levels and video game openings today, aren't we?
Yes, we are.
So to start things off, I guess one game we've both played and both have quite a bit of experience with is The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild.
Yes, definitely.
And yeah, so the opening of that naturally is the Great Plateau. And to me, it's really up there. It was such a great start to that game.
For sure. I mean, it's just like the perfect learning environment. Because you set out on not too big of a world, but big enough that you've got enough to explore.
It feels expansive.
Yeah, for sure. And you can sort of grasp the controls. And the way that the dungeons are set up so that they're not too difficult, but you start to understand the runes that will just carry you through the rest of the game.
Yep.
And then it also teaches you about things like weapons, durability, having broken, because that was a thing you needed to learn, because that's not been in the series before, really. Unless
no previous Zelda. I guess the only similar thing is Wind Waker, where you could kill enemies and steal their weapons, but it wasn't to the extent of Breath of the Wild, because there was no kind of durability or anything like that. I guess another thing I like about the Great Plateau is the non-linearity, the freedom you have, because it sort of starts the game in the way it means to continue. So later on, when the world opens up to you, you can obviously go wherever you want, but naturally it's to a much greater extent than in the Great Plateau. Like you said, it's not too big, but after you do the first shrine, you can do any of the other 3 in whatever order you please. I can't remember which 3 are the ones you do after the first one and which one is the beginning one, but...
It's been 5 years since I played the start.
Yeah.
But one of the really good things, actually, that they teach you is also... there's that little bit that you go around the side, and there's the little bit where you have to chop down the tree with your axe.
To make the bridge.
To get the bridge to come down, and so that teaches you about the physics and that you can like interact with the environment. But then, as you go past that, there's like peppers on the ground.
Yes, I was just gonna get onto that one as well.
And there's a little cooking pot, and there's a torch, and that is like one of the best parts because it teaches you so much about how everything interacts with each other. And you probably just did it instinctively. You're like, oh, there's a torch here. Oh, there's a fire over there. There's a cooking pot. I've got some like mushrooms and peppers. And you put 2 and 2 together. You put it all together, and it doesn't tell you, look, this is how you craft food. This is how you gain buffs so you don't die in the frostbite. Because that's another thing. So you start taking damage and like, right, how do I progress through this frosty area to get to the next shrine that I need to get to? So it just sort of teaches you all of this without telling you very much. And it's that aha moment.
Yeah, I really like when games do that, because rather than directly telling you in a tutorial or having a side character say something, it lets you figure it out for yourself, and that gives you the feeling of satisfaction. Like, I figured out how to knock down the tree and make a bridge, I figured out how to cook the berries and stay warm in the heat. Like, the idea of the game just nudging you in the right direction without directly telling you makes it feel so much more rewarding when you figure it out.
Yeah. For sure. And I think it was a really genius idea to have it only contained to the small area of the Great Plateau. Because if you were just plonked in the middle of Hyrule Field, I don't think I would have paid attention to crafting or figuring out any of that stuff.
Yeah.
I would have just gone like, let's go straight for the highest mountain. Let's go climb the highest mountain. And I would have just been completely lost.
Same here. Like, I'd have just gone in some random direction. I'd have probably ended up in the Gerudo Desert. But, yeah, the Great Plateau hones you into a relatively small area, keeps everything pretty contained. And then, I think one of my favourite parts of the game is immediately after the Great Plateau.
Oh, yes.
Because that's when you've learnt the game, you know how everything works. And then at that point, it's the first moment where the world is truly a oyster. At that point, you can go in any direction you want. And when you're playing the game for the first time, completely blind, you don't have any spoilers, you don't know what you're doing, that is just such a cool part of the game, because everyone will take a different path, everyone will go off in a different direction. I know generally you're supposed to go to Kakariko Village and then to Zora's Domain, but you could theoretically go straight to Ganon's castle if you wanted to.
You really can. I remember when I first left the Great Plateau, I did go to Kakariko Village like you're supposed to.
Yeah, me too.
But then after that, I sort of teleported back and just started wandering. And I remember going to sort of like the mountains near the Gerudo bit.
Yeah.
Ridiculously high level stuff that I shouldn't have been going anywhere near. But I remember just like struggling and pushing these guys off of cliffs because I didn't deal nearly enough damage to like kill them properly. So I'd just shove them off like cliffs and stuff and take their ridiculous weapons that did like 50 times the damage of all the weapons I had already.
Yeah.
And it was like, I shouldn't have been there, but the freedom that it let me have right from the get-go, right after I'd completed the tutorial was really nice.
Yeah, I had a similar kind of experience as well, except I think Gerudo is on like is it top left of the map or bottom left?
Bottom left.
Yeah, I went in not quite the opposite direction, but I went towards bottom right, not directly towards Zora. So I ended up going towards, I think it's Lurelin Village, like the fishing place.
Yeah, the little fishing town.
Yeah, and that's a town that people often don't discover until the very end of the game.
Yeah, I didn't.
And that was the first one I found.
It was like the last one I found. I didn't even realise it was in the game for like 100 hours.
Because to get there, you have to go through like a really stormy area. There's enemies with electric weapons, and it's just kind of a nightmare. But to me, that just increased the feeling of satisfaction when I finally like found somewhere I could chill, and a stable as well. There was a stable nearby. I had a horse.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that can all be like part of the opening for people as well, because the opening is so different in Breath of the Wild. Sure, you've got the Great Plateau, which is great, but everyone sort of plays that very similarly.
That's true. Yeah.
But then as soon as you've done with that, and it can still be considered the opening just after the Great Plateau.
Yeah.
You know, you're free to do whatever you want, and then, you know, you start crafting your own story of what you did. So it's quite interesting how everyone goes about completing the game once they've just been let loose.
Yeah. And I suppose even when you're in the Great Plateau, there is still a little bit of variation in how you play it. And that sort of brings me on to another point, which is replayability. To me, that's one of the Great Plateau's main strengths, because you can keep coming back to it, maybe try to do it a little bit faster, maybe play it in a different way. So, for example, putting some kind of restriction on yourself to only use a certain weapon, like only a stick. And I think going back and playing through the Great Plateau once you've beaten the game, and just replaying it with all the knowledge you have from just doing everything the game has to offer is something every Breath of the Wild player should experience, because you can just blitz through it.
And I think it's Master Mode, right? The DLC?
Yeah.
Where everything gets ramped up. I replayed just the Great Plateau because I'm too scared to go through the rest of the game in Master Mode. I'm nowhere near as good.
No, I haven't even attempted that.
But the Great Plateau
You've done more than me.
Is as you were saying before, is cool to go back and just like use everything you now know to just zoom through everything. And the Great Plateau was a challenge already, because there were things like guardians just sort of chilling.
Yeah.
They didn't move.
Yeah,
but
the
they
stationary
were there.
guardians. When the first guardian wakes up and the cutscene plays and the music kicks in, it strikes fear into your heart. It's terrifying.
Yeah, and it's just, it absolutely obliterates your health in one shot as well.
Yep.
Terrifying. But then in Master Mode, they put a Lionel right there, just out in the open.
A silver
Have
one?
fun.
Or...
Yeah, I
no.
think so. I think it's a silver Lionel. And they're just like, okay, enjoy. Welcome to Master Mode. Also, its health regenerates, and so does all the other enemies. Good luck. And you're just left to fend for yourself. And it's like a whole new experience. So you feel like an absolute noob again.
Yeah.
Like a beginner, a novice. You've been chucked into this horrendous situation, but it's all still familiar.
Yeah.
And it is cool going back and using all your new techniques and everything you know to just zoom through everything. One of the greats, for sure.
Definitely, like, as far as Zelda game openings go,
oh yeah,
right near the top, if not number one.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of other Zelda games are a little bit slow to start, from what I've found, although I am very limited in my Zelda experience.
Yeah. So that is true for some of them, especially like the ones on the Wii, Skyward Sword and Twilight Princess. But in some ways that is quite good, because in Twilight Princess especially, it built up the like happy little town of Ordon Village. It's just a small, really chill community, and it does a great job of sort of setting up the world as a foundation for the rest of the game. So I suppose it didn't necessarily need to chuck you straight into the deep end to be an effective opening.
That's interesting, actually, because I was just thinking what actually makes a good opening, because I haven't got it written down here, but like some openings are really slow and deliberately so, so you start learning. So I haven't got it written down, but Red Dead Redemption 2, everyone hates that opening because it's so slow. And a good few hours in this, like, just trotting around in the snow. You can barely even run. And you just have to talk to characters and just go on very easy, boring missions. But at the same time, it was building up this whole world, and you could hear all the characters, and there was a big narrative starting to form.
Yep.
And you were, already siding with certain characters. And then and it was sort of that Breath of the Wild moment where you're like free to go anywhere, but even more so because you've been
chained for so long. Yeah.
Yeah, and it was just like, wow, no, you can go anywhere. Go and see actual civilization, go like rob banks and stuff. It's like amazing. You can just go do whatever you want. And that was, so in a sense, it wasn't a great opening, but it was a necessary opening, I think.
Yeah, okay.
And it served another purpose. So I suppose it depends what you need to get out of it. But some can do both. And hopefully we'll cover some that do both building the world and also being actually fun.
Yeah, I think we will.
Speaking of which, we should probably go on to some other games we've played together. So we've both played Mario Odyssey.
We have indeed.
And that's got less of a story focus, I suppose.
As Mario games tend to, yeah.
But it does a good job. It does a good job of doing both. It gets it over with quite quick.
Yeah.
It's like, here's Cappy, here's a 5-second conversation, now go do some more platforming.
That's it. Yep. Because that's what's important in a Mario game, the platforming. That's what makes Mario Mario. But yeah, the first level in that game was, of course, Cascade Kingdom.
Well, there was Cap Kingdom before that as well.
Yeah.
So,
but if we're talking like...
Yeah, I mean, the opening of the game is an extension over several bits, really. So
yeah,
Capcade's your first proper experience, and it's a good one. It's a really good one.
Yeah, because I think first impressions are so important, and Cascade Kingdom really does well in that department. It smashes it out of the park because it just feels huge. I know, like, it's not an open world or anything, it's not that type of game, but even so, the scope of Cascade Kingdom, all the set pieces, like the giant T-Rex, it's unlike anything that's been in a previous Mario game. And for me, playing it personally, having only really played through 64 Sunshine and Galaxy, Cascade Kingdom hit me hard. It was cool.
Oh, for sure. Also, only playing 64 Sunshine and Galaxy, I basically played nothing. I played a lot of the 2D games, so for me, this was like a whole new thing.
Oh, that was an even bigger transition, yeah.
And it was like, wow, like this is what Mario can actually be. As you were saying before, the dinosaur, that was a great little bit. But it was also how detailed the world was. Sort of coming from Breath of the Wild, not long before.
Yeah.
At least when I got my Switch anyway. It was like a month between playing them. And it was a lot more densely packed, I found the world.
Yeah, because there's something around every corner, I guess.
Loads
like,
to do.
Everywhere you look, there'll be like a purple coin or a moon.
Yeah, lots of like hidden paths and secrets and, here you found a door by ground pounding this thing or whatever.
Yeah.
And so I really liked how much stuff there was, even though it wasn't massive, it felt massive. Yeah, it was a really good one. And it was a good theme as well. It wasn't just a grass level that's just like, hey, here's the plains, here's a mushroom or whatever.
Yeah, that's another thing Mario Odyssey did great. Like, it wasn't just plains, desert, lava, ice, water. Yeah, the themes were pretty fleshed out, and Cascade Kingdom did a very good job of setting the tone of that for the game going forward.
Definitely.
I guess while we're on the subject of Mario, we can dial it right back to 1996 and talk about, quite an obscure game. I don't know if you've heard of it, but Super Mario 64?
What is that? Mario 64?
Perchance.
Never heard of Mario 64.
Yeah, I didn't expect you to. But, yeah, Bob on Battlefield.
I
know, like, the opening technically is Peach's Castle and the courtyard and everything, but the first level of the game being Bob on Battlefield, yeah, like you said, absolute classic. And it's really good at teaching you how the game works with pretty much no risk.
Yeah.
Because it's a big open sandbox-like area, but unlike a lot of the other levels in Mario 64, there's nowhere where you can actually fall off and die.
Which is a big thing.
Yeah, that's like an insta-kill. That happens in Womp's Fortress, which is the very next world, but in Bob on Battlefield, you're completely safe from that.
And it was 100% necessary as well.
Oh, yeah. In the grand scheme of gaming.
Because, this was the transition to 3D. A lot of people, if you're good at games or not, you would need that training to sort of understand right, now we can move in any direction we want. We've got to understand that we can fall off of ledges that we can't like necessarily see.
Yep.
So, and especially for 8-year-old me playing Mario 64 DS, that was a big error.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, if I'd jump into especially the frozen one where you're with the penguin.
Oh, Cool Mountain. Yeah.
I'd fall off so many times there, just like slipping around. So having Bob on Battlefield to actually teach me how to not be an idiot was very important.
Yeah, and another thing is that Bob on Battlefield not only provides you a safe environment where you can learn how to play, but it also introduces you to a lot of the recurring mechanics in Super Mario 64. So there's the idea that you can do stars in whatever order you want, because the first star is the King Bob-omb fight, but if you wanted to, you could get the chain chomp one first, you could technically get the red coins first if you really wanted to. That's another cool aspect of it. Also, the King Bob-omb fight, it kind of shares a few parallels to the first Bowser fight, in the sense that you're running around a big guy, picking him up from behind and throwing him.
And it was a good boss. It wasn't anything really crazy or groundbreaking or anything. Yeah. But it was, again, you need to learn how to fight bosses in 3D. And just being able to like run around him and pick him up from behind was just really cool.
Definitely, yeah.
I guess we'll stick on the theme of platformers. I believe you're an expert in platformers.
Oh, yeah, quite the expert.
Any particularly standout levels from opening ones? There's got to be a few.
Yeah, I will, like, I know I'm pretty biased in saying this, but Banjo-Kazooie is up there for me.
Oh, I see, okay.
Yeah, you knew where it was going.
I have no idea what Banjo-Kazooie's first level is.
So, the first area you're in is where Banjo's house is, and that is Spiral Mountain.
Right. Oh, that's...
it's the stage in Smash.
Yeah, I was going to say, that sounds familiar.
And what's really cool about it is that normally when you're playing through... There's a tutorial, basically, where Bottles, the mole, he teaches you all of your moves. But if you've played the game before, you can talk to him and say, yo, I already know everything, you don't need to teach me.
Oh, that is good. And
then, at that point, you start with all your moves by default, so you can just completely skip the tutorial. And also, another good thing about Spiral Mountain is that there's 6 honeycomb pieces hidden throughout, and when you get all 6 of them, you get a health upgrade. And they're sort of hidden in different alcoves, up trees and stuff, and that sort of teaches you to look for things and where you'd expect to find Jiggies later on in the game. Jiggies being the main collectible of Banjo-Kazooie.
Right.
I mean, there are also a few enemies, so you do get to grips with the combat as well. But I think the great thing is that it doesn't just teach you the combat, but also how Banjo and Kazooie work together in unison. So the grounded enemies can just be killed by rolling into them or punching them with Banjo, but for the airborne enemies, that doesn't work. And that's where Kazooie comes in, because you can jump in and peck them to take them out. You can't take any damage, which is good. In fact, I think the only way you can die in Spiral Mountain is by drowning, which is possible, but unlikely to happen. It's generally a very low-risk, safe place for you to learn how to play Banjo-Kazooie, basically.
Very good. Alright, so yeah, I'm less of a platforming fan, I guess you could say, but I am a big fan of the Naughty Dog games. I think they do a great job at intros and first levels. So I guess we'll start with Uncharted 2, the classic, amazing first level. So you're dangling off of a train. You basically wake up. There's a little cutscene, about 10 seconds long, of Nathan Drake. He's waking up. There's blood everywhere. He's sat in a train, and then the camera pans, and it shows that he's falling down pretty much.
Oh no!
And everything starts crashing down. So you have to climb out of the train and start climbing up it to get you're basically hanging over a mountain.
Oh right, I see. Yeah.
It's of course it's a scripted sequence, so nothing can actually harm you per se.
Yeah. You can't actually go off the mountain and die.
Yeah. As with most Naughty Dog games of that style. But there is still that tension there. There is still that, oh my word, we're literally hanging off a train and pipes are breaking. Every time you try and grab one, it will start swinging or something will fall down and there'll be another scripted sequence. So it is a really cool sequence.
Yep.
And then when you get to the top, you can actually, and when I remember first playing it, you can actually fall off right at the end. So the train, as you like climb into the last carriage to get up, it will start slowly like wheeling off the cliff. The whole train's going to go, and the camera's zooming in on you as you're running down, and then you have to jump right at the end. And I jumped too early and fell into the cliff the first time. But the second time I did it as intended, and then it sort of pans into sort of a flashback of or how have we gotten here then? And it goes back and forth between cutscene of introducing the characters and stuff, and then and cut back to reality. We're still bleeding on the side of a cliff.
Yep.
And we do a little bit more walking, and then we cut straight back. So I really like the dynamic nature of the start, where it's giving you a bit of cutscene, bit of walking around. But the cool thing is about Uncharted 2 is that you get to that exact point again, and you basically play through that bit again, but in context now. Like a long way down the line. So after this big, massive train sequence where you're like shooting helicopters and armored guys and everything's going well, and then the train blows up and you're back where you started on that cliff, and you have to do it again, but now you've got all this context, you've got all this story behind you.
You know how you ended up
We need to get back and we've just been betrayed or whatever's happened, right? So it's interesting, a game starting with the middle. You don't find that too often. So I thought that was cool.
Yeah, I mean, I'd imagine it's still like really cool the first time, like it's a really dramatic sequence.
Definitely.
But yeah. It's cool that even though it's the same scene again, it just feels a lot more powerful the second time, I suppose, when you have the context.
And it's still fun. It's still a fun sequence, and doesn't feel out of place going through it again, because you've still got the solid climbing and platforming and shooting and stuff.
Yeah.
So it's good stuff, and I think a much improved. I actually can't remember the start of the first game, which is probably a bad sign because it wasn't that memorable. I think you're just wandering around the jungle and you start and you find a little temple-y thing. But that was like, bam, straight into it. Here's Uncharted 2.
Yep.
And so it started with action. And that brings me nicely onto The Last of Us, which I think is the other phenomenal start to a game where it's less of the action and it's a lot more narrative. So you start with a little cutscene introducing your two characters. So you have Joel, who's the main guy, and you have his daughter, Sarah. And they're the two that start in this little cutscene right at the start of the game.
Right, okay.
And then you play as Sarah from that point onwards, once you start gaining control. So there's a little like intro thing, and then she goes to sleep. She wakes up the next day and things are not right, as you'd expect.
Yep.
It's pitch black, TV flickering and the radio is buzzing and there's no one anywhere. Joel's nowhere to be seen, and so it sort of guides you through the house, and you can interact with things and just sort of take in the environment. So you can just explore Sarah's room. She's got like some things, some pictures, and she'll make little comments if you go up and press triangle or whatever. She'll go and say, "Oh, this is that time that we played football at the park," or whatever. And then as you go through, more of the story starts to unfold until you get right to the back of the house and you see your first zombie, and you're like, "Uh-oh,
something's not right here."
Something's bad." And then Joel shoots their neighbour, who's turned into a zombie. He's coming, and then things really start going downhill from there, and everything gets ramped up. The story, it just chucks you straight in. It's still there's no action the player needs to put in. You're just sort of in for the ride.
Okay, yeah, seeing it unfold.
And there was something I noticed actually the second time playing through. I didn't notice this.
Yeah.
But I will, minor spoilers. Well, it's the spoiler for the first half an hour of the game.
There's your warning.
That's your warning. At the end of this chapter, Sarah dies to a military person who's been told, you just got to kill everyone because we can't have the risk of infecting more people or whatever, right? And obviously, well, maybe not obviously, but you are not playing as Sarah when this happens. It's in a cutscene, but right before that, you're playing as Joel. And I didn't realise this, but at a certain point, I think it's like a car crashes.
Yep.
You're in this car, and then there's a big car crash, and a little cutscene happens. And at that point onwards, you're now playing as Joel.
Oh.
I didn't notice that.
Yeah.
I was like, that should have sent alarm bells ringing. Why am I not playing as this character anymore that is supposed to be who I'm playing as? I thought that's the main character. And from then onwards, you're now Joel for the rest of the game.
Okay, yeah. That's really cool.
Because I thought they just did it right at the end. Once Sarah died, oh, you're just dead. But no, they do it halfway through, and that really added to the impact. And then, of course, that cutscene right at the end where she dies is just gut-wrenching and really gets the mood going. Because for the rest of the game, you've got that lingering in the back of your mind when everything else is going on. And it's just like really powerful start. So both of those two, Uncharted 2, Last of Us, amazing openings, both sort of different angles of it. But I've got to say, those two stuck out in my memory.
Yeah.
So then, Fiber, I've heard, I don't know where I've heard this from, but I've heard that you've played Star Fox 64 and you thought it was a good intro.
Impossible.
How did I know this?
Star Fox 64, I love the opening of that game so much. from the actual intro cutscene to the mission itself, which is Corneria. What I like about the intro, first and foremost, is the music. Like, it really gets you pumped up, it gets you amped up, you hear the Star Fox theme kick in. It's great stuff. And, of course, in that cutscene, you also get introduced to the little team dialogue and the banter between them. So, of course, you've got good old Fox, Falco, Slippy, and Peppy. And I think the quote that Fox says right before you jet off and start the mission, it's, "I see him up ahead, let's rock and roll." I don't know, I just really like that quote. It's fitting for Fox's character, and it just makes you feel really cool.
Yeah.
Now, I think probably the best thing about Corneria is that it introduces the branching path mechanic of Star Fox 64. So, in this game, there's like an easy path, a middle path, and a hard path. And in the first mission, Corneria, it branches off into 2 of those routes. So, doing the mission normally for the first time will likely put you on the easy path. But there's a couple of requirements you need to do to get onto the hard route. So, the first thing you need to do is save Falco. Now, for once, it's not actually Slippy who's being attacked by the enemies, you know? You would expect it to be Slippy, although he does get attacked, like, immediately after you start the mission, but...
Of course.
Yeah. And that's something I didn't even consider, because Slippy being attacked right at the start of the mission teaches you about saving teammates, and that's something that happens a lot throughout Star Fox 64.
Right.
In a lot of different missions, one of your allies will be getting shot down and you have to save them. So I think having that happen right in the opening moments of the very first mission was a great idea. Typical Slippy stuff, but later on, Falco is being attacked and he's got some enemies on his tail. Peppy does tell you to boost and to shoot them down, but the first time you're playing it, it's tricky, and Falco is likely to die there. I know when I was playing through as a kid, Falco died multiple times on my multiple playthroughs. Yeah, I could not save him for the life of me. But when you eventually do manage to chase those enemies, take them down, Falco will thank you for saving him. And then after that, there's like a few different archways that you need to fly under. And if you successfully fly through all of those, which means that you've become accustomed to the controls, you know what you're doing, Falco will say, "Yo, pretty smooth flying, Fox," and sees a different boss in the distance and takes the lead. He's like, "Yo, Fox, follow me," and takes you through a waterfall, and that puts you on a different route. So yeah, to get onto that route, you need to be skilled enough, you need to know what you're doing, and then when you go there, you take on a different boss, and that puts you on a slightly harder mission, which is called Sector Y. So I just think that's really cool. The fact that you can still get through it as a newbie, you're not gonna like unlock the hard path necessarily, but it's still a very newcomer friendly mission. The first boss is very easy, he'll die really quickly, but on a second playthrough or a replay, you're gonna find that second route, and when that happens for the first time, it's like an amazing sense of accomplishment, a sense of discovery, because I remember it just blew my mind the first time Falco just flew through the waterfall, and that is a mechanic that's carried through like the rest of the game.
Yeah, I like the fact that if you're just starting out, you probably won't get onto the hard path initially, but then you can come back, and sort of like the Great Plateau, but even more so is that now you've mastered the game, you come back and you find all this new stuff you can do.
Yeah.
I like that, that's cool. Replay value.
I guess while we're on the subject of openings you tend to come back to, another one I could throw in here is Yooka-laylee the Impossible Lair. It's a very tenuous kind of connection there, but for the sake of the transition, we'll take it, yeah.
We've got to take what we can get at this point.
So what it does is that it drops you straight in the final level of the game, which is the Impossible Lair. And it's a very, very hard level. Theoretically, you could technically beat it on your first attempt, but there is no way that's happening. No one could possibly be skilled enough at the game on their first try to beat it. But you can only take 2 hits at that point. One being Laylee, who will then fly away. It's a bit like Yoshi's Island, where you've got Baby Mario, and when you get hit, he starts crying and flies away in a bubble or something, and then you jump to get him back. It's the same thing with Yuka and Laylee, so you technically have infinite hits if you can keep getting Laylee back, but yeah. So what happens then is that there's this queen bee, and all of her worker bees, her army, they've been locked up in these like glass beehive cages, and in each level of the game there's one of those bees at the end that you have to save. Each of those bees gives you 1 extra hit in the Impossible Lair. Now, I think there's I'd like to say 20 or 25 different levels in the game.
Right.
Each of which has 2 different variations, and from each of those you get a B. So you could come back to the impossible lair at any point in the game, whenever you feel confident enough. Like after 10 levels, if you've got 10 Bs, you're like, yeah, I can do this.
That's cool.
You can go back and go straight back to the impossible lair, yeah. And every time you play it, it gives you a percentage, so you know how far you got through it.
That's actually a really cool concept.
Yeah, you know like how many more Bs roughly you'd need to collect to help you get to the end. It's really cool, and yeah, like I said, you can just do it whenever you feel like. Being a completionist myself, wanted to collect every single B and then do it, but yeah, by all means, if you want, you don't have to.
It's kind of like the Ganon's Castle in Breath of the Wild.
Yeah,
how you
exactly
can
like
go
that
there
almost.
whenever. I like that. It seems like quite a modern trend, having you just be able to just go and do the boss whenever. Because I can't think of many games that just sort of let you do that. But that is it's a very cool concept. I actually didn't know that Yooka-laylee and the Impossible Lair actually did that. So
yeah, highly recommended, by the way, for any fans of 2D platformers.
That's got me quite interested now, actually. Sounds very cool.
Yeah, if you've played, I think you've played Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze, haven't you?
I've played a good bit of it.
Yeah, it's very similar to that gameplay-wise, being a Rareware-styled 2D platformer.
Right, I guess I'll go on to my last one that I've got to talk about then. And that is, I could have gone with any Metal Gear Solid, because they've all got great intros in their own right. But Metal Gear Solid 2, something about the tanker mission in that game is just, I love it. The intro is so good. I'd say it takes about 2 hours to get through on your first try, but once you know where you're going, you can do it much, much quicker than that. So when I did it recently to capture footage, I did most of it in half an hour. But it's perfect Metal Gear Solid gameplay. It's exactly what you want out of it, which is probably why a lot of people then hated the bit that came after it, which took away Solid Snake and gave you this new character that a lot of people really didn't like. But before that bit, you had the tanker. So you get dropped into the boat, and there's a little tutorial in case you've never played a Metal Gear Solid game before. In which case, what are you doing, you muppet? Go play the first one. Do it
why
right
are you
now.
jumping straight into 2? What's going on?
I actually did jump straight into 2, and it was a terrible, terrible idea, because I didn't have the first one, and I was like, I've got a PS2, I'll buy Metal Gear Solid 2, and it almost turned me away from the whole franchise, because I was like, square to shoot? That's horrendous. And I probably didn't pay attention to any of the cutscenes or anything telling me what to do, so don't do that. But once you do get the hang of it, and especially if you played the first game, it's all very familiar. All the buttons are there. You've got your gun, you've got your trank. You know, you can press up against walls and all that sort of thing.
Yep.
But the way that it's sort of laid out is it's quite an open first level. It is just a boat, and you can go anywhere in the boat. So there's a lot of different branching paths you can take. There's a lot of different doors. They all sort of generally lead to the same place. But I like the somewhat semblance of freedom you get.
Yeah. The illusion of freedom.
And it gives you a lot of enemies to practice. You know, you can hold them up, or you can punch them, or choke them, or whatever you want to do. It lets you learn the new controls and whatever. But it's a great introduction. It's got a great little story bit before that, which sets up the game and sets up why you're on the boat. Yeah, there's so many good like moments in that first bit. So you've got the initial thing where you're able to sneak into the boat. You've got to open the door. You've got to sneak past all the lights and the guards, and you can go into this little restaurant-y area. And there's so many amazing little details. That's what Kojima is really great at, is loads of little details that he hides in all his games. So you can go into this restaurant area, and once you've got rid of the guards, you can start just messing around. And that's it's one of the more fun things to do. You just, right, I'm going to go just see what I can get away with. So you just start shooting like the books off the racks and shooting the bottles in the bar area. And they added, who decided to put this in, I don't know. Probably Kojima himself, because it's just that stupid. It's just, there's a little like pot of ice that you can shoot.
Okay.
And if you shoot the pot with your trank gun, it will spew the ice everywhere. And if you wait there long enough, the ice will melt in real time over like 3 minutes or whatever. You just sit there and you watch it melt. And you're like, wow, this is very cool for the PS2. I'm very impressed.
That is good attention to detail. Like, it seems unnecessary almost, but it's cool.
Oh, it's entirely unnecessary, but and I didn't even notice until the second time playing through that it was even a thing. And I bet there's loads that I've missed out as well. If anyone's more familiar, I bet there's loads of other secret stuff that I missed.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was that was a good bit. There was also on the top floor where it sort of introduces the fact that real life logic can also apply, which is quite a novel concept from the PS2 as well. Not that many games sort of incorporated that so much. So there's a bit in the wall that's covered in lasers, and there's a little deactivating thing that you can shoot, but you don't have a gun yet. And to get the gun, you've got to go under the lasers. But you don't know how to get past it until you notice there's a little fire hydrant thing. What do you call it?
A fire extinguisher?
Fire extinguisher.
Yeah.
That's the one. And if you shoot that, it will spew the sort of smoke.
CO2.
And similar to like if you've been to laser tag or something, right?
Yeah.
You can see the lasers through the smoke. And you're like, that's how I'm supposed to get through.
Oh, that's cool.
You can see there's a little bit to crawl through, so that's how you would figure that out. That took me ages to figure out because I was not prepared to use real life logic for a game released in like 2001.
Yeah, throws you off guard a bit.
Yeah, if I'd known about the ice cubes, maybe I would have been paying more attention. But it's that sort of thing. And then you can also, you can go in lockers and all that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Where there's just loads of hidden goodies. There's posters in all the lockers as well, which you can press yourself in and it will cover you up. And you can distract guards by like opening lockers and hiding behind them and that sort of thing. And you can pick up guards' bodies and put them in lockers. I've completely forgot about that as well. So there's loads of like little details like that where it's like, wow, this is like the real true stealth experience. Very cool. And then it ends with a boss fight. Nothing crazy, but it's a decent boss fight.
Yeah, that's all you need sometimes.
That's all you need. And then there is a bit after that where it's basically you go down to the bottom layer, and there's another cool cutscene that introduces some past characters. I won't spoil anything, but you go down to this bit and there's all the Marines and they're all training and they're watching this like PowerPoint presentation on a massive projector. And your shadow, if you run past it, your shadow will project on the screen. They'll all notice you and that sort of thing. And
I like that, yeah.
There's so much just crammed into this one little bit right at the start. And it's just a fantastic way to open the game. Perhaps, it's definitely the highlight of Metal Gear Solid 2. People were less fond of the bit afterwards, as I said before. Raiden, not the most popular characters, we'll say. And it wasn't the most groundbreaking of Metal Gear games. But that bit for me, the start, I can't really fault it. It's just very, very well done.
Alright, so I think that's about all we've got time for today. So, Finley, thank you for coming along today and being in this podcast.
Thank you for having me on.
Yeah. So, Mr. Just That Finley, this is your moment to shine. Is there anything you want to promote to all the fans listening out there?
All the fans. Yeah, I do have a YouTube channel in which I infrequently post on. I'm trying to improve that, but we'll see how it goes. But yeah, if you want to see more from me, I have a channel. Should be in the description or something.
There you go. It definitely will be. And the title as well.
Yes.
Yeah, definitely go check out Finley. He makes some banging content. And we're also part of a collab channel as well. So if you want to check that out as well, it's called The Pal Block. Link will also be in the description.
Yes.
Alright, see you guys next time.